So, did we lose somebody?
No, we gained
Oh,
two.
we just went to get some. Go gain two. How about that? Okay. So we're gonna, Tom asked me to do something on airspace, and I thought it's really fortuitous because we had just done that for the EAA chapter here in Lafayette, going on over airspace, and the surprising takeaway from it was that a lot of people didn't know a lot of this stuff. So I thought, yeah, this will be good. Somebody can use this. So this is what I put together. Well, actually, myself and another guy put together, and so I'll kind of, once I get figured out how to get this thing going, we'll get going. But basically, the purpose of this presentation is to kind of refresh our members' knowledge of the airspace and the different classifications of it. And then also, I think Tom, and I kind of got an inference from him that this would be a springboard for future instructional club meetings. Some examples would be like on, charts, interpreting them, going through pre-flight planning, exercises, reviewing glider performance. I kind of threw that one in there because, I am a new pilot student, and I did this for our powered airplanes, and you'd be surprised how many of the current pilots we had in the chapter really had a tough time interpreting the performance charts in the airplanes. And then also one for emergency procedures. So there's some ideas. I'm sure there's more out there. Now, a little bit about myself. Just basically, I've been in aviation 50 years now, 30 of it professionally. And I'm a graduate of Ball State and Purdue University, one in business and two in engineering. Now, I spent 20 years as a project manager for Caterpillar in their offshore diesel engines. I pulled up also here for the club members. This is the latest schedule that I've got as far as the cruise. I don't know if it's changed or not. But the one thing I want to draw and remind everybody is April 10th. That's our safety meeting there, and it starts at 9 in the morning. So I don't know if this schedule has changed or not. But the references I used for my presentation are just basically the Airman's Information Manual, the Glider Pilot's Handbook, and then the Russell Holtz had the 2018 edition, which is pretty good. And then the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge had a lot of great information and a lot of great graphics that I could use. These are all downloadable from the FAA website as PDF files, and you'll have to watch the AIM. That's almost 900 pages, so it does eat up quite a bit of memory. But let's charge on here. So we're going to talk about airspace classification and try and understand this whole different classifications of the airspace in the United States. And the United States is considered the hardest, most difficult airspace to fly in as far as the different areas. And you can see that, yeah, it is. Even Canada is not this bad, or Mexico. And the reason I say this is good training for me is the last 20 years of my career flying aircraft, I didn't have to worry about this because I always flew instruments on an instrument flight plan because I was up in the Class A aerospace or airspace, aerospace guys, which starts at 18,000 feet and runs to 60,000 feet. And up there, everything is, pilots have to be instrument rated, the aircraft has to be instrument capable, and you have to be on an IFR flight plan. And so when you come out of there, you're usually going into one of these, Class Bs, or Class Cs, or Class Ds, and you're not really worried about it because you've got permission to enter anyway because you're on two-way, you're talking to center or approach control. But then we start getting into what I wanted to start out first with is the Class G airspace that surrounds the vast majority of the country. It starts at the surface and it usually goes up to 700 feet above the ground, or 1,200 feet, or 14,000 feet. And it's not depicted on the charts. There's no way that you can see it. What you actually see in this case is the beginning of Class E airspace. And Class E is defined by this magenta circle that fades towards the direction of the ceiling, or in this case, the floor, the ceiling of the Class G, or the floor of the Class E. And all over Alec here, you can see that it fades this direction towards the airport. So that means the floor starts at 700 feet. On the other side, heading the other direction, that means the floor starts at 1,200 feet. And you can see that the vast majority of the country is Class G. But like I said, it's not depicted. It's what's left of A, B, C, and D, and E airspace, and it's uncontrolled. The FAA, the air traffic control, does not control it. They don't issue any clearances or anything to fly in it. So the ceiling, as I explained here, is 700 feet or 1,200 feet. And one thing I noticed about my computer this morning, I didn't know that it would pick up aircraft. So that's, I don't know who AAY 991 is, but he's at 25,950 feet. I didn't know that ForeFlight would do this on your computer. So, hey, if you got ForeFlight out there, you got a great way to plan. What's that?
Yeah, it's a selection in your setup.
And here's yeah, it's got to be. Yeah, I didn't know I'd had it set up that way, but that's pretty cool. Here's a 2247 Tango down here. He's at 3,100 feet. I don't know why these guys can't hold an altitude. I'm being picky, but so what? So
You can also see all the aircraft on Flight Aware.
Yeah, right. So we were talking about Class G and Class E. So their basic Bfr minimums are Class E is fairly easy. It's 3 or 5 miles and 500 below, 1,000 above, and 2,000 feet horizontally for cloud clearance. And this is visibility. When you get down into Class G, that gets kind of tough. And you would think, well, around here, why are we talking about 10,000 feet? But out in the mountains, yeah, you will be above 10,000 feet. And there, the visibility goes to, you need 5 statute miles. And it goes to 1,000 above, 1,000 below, and a mile horizontal from clouds. So Class G actually has the more complicated visibility and cloud clearance requirements. So I put these two together because G goes into E, and they're fairly close. So now the one, Class D is the one that we have around here quite a bit, and the two nearest ones are Anderson and Muncie. And they are, and when it was operating, and Anderson and over here Lafayette, they're all part-time towers. And sometimes Class D airspace will also contain a terminal radar service area, TRSA. That's if there is radar co-located with the tower. And if that is, that's a voluntary service. To fly in a TRSA, that's entirely voluntary. You don't have to do it, but they do offer that service. So when the tower is closed and weather is available, the airspace becomes a Class E base or floor on it. But if weather is not there, then it becomes a Class G airspace. Now, it used to be that they had what was called control zones. I don't know if they still have those anymore. I haven't heard anything of them. But when there was weather that was co-located and a tower wasn't there, then there was a control zone in operation. But the boundaries for a Class D is a 5 nautical mile radius, and it goes up to 2,500 feet above the surface. The cylinder is identified by the dashed ring, as you can see here. That's usually 5 miles out, and the ceiling is marked in brackets, and that's 2,500 feet above the ground here. And you can see here's 3,400 here. That tells you the ceiling of the airspace. There's really not much more to say about that other than you need two-way radio communication before going in it. I don't, so a glider would, I think the only reason you'd be going there is if you'd have an off airport landing. Is that right?
Yeah, we had an example last year where Todd,
So,
can you hear me? Last year we had Todd Hurley flew over Muncie going to the east and had called Muncie Tower and let them know that he was overflying their airspace. In other words, he was at 3401 or above. And then he ran out of thermals, and he was heading back west toward Alexandria, and he realized he wasn't going to make it. So he had actually landed at Muncie Airport. There's a controller over there that doesn't like gliders, and made some statements to us about they didn't want us coming over there. Well, that's too bad. You can land there if you need to in an emergency.
that is. Yeah, and you can pass over it if you need to too. You know. So, but anyway, two-way radio is required before you can enter it. Now, if you're above it, you don't even have to talk to them. And a transponder is typically not required. You don't need a transponder and the capability of reading it. But the minimum visibility is 3 statute miles, and then your cloud clearance is, like I said, is 500 below, 1,000 above, and 2,000 feet horizontal. And you have the minimum of a student pilot certificate. So I could even go over there and land, you know. So that's the Class D airspace. We have 3 indications, or 3 of areas around here that we would have to deal with. The next one is Class C. Now this one, This one is kind of complicated, and you'll have to understand, because what you would think would be logical, somehow logic doesn't come into this. But the boundaries, again, typically are 5 miles out for the core. This is for the air traffic area, and it goes from the surface to 4,000 feet above the ground. Now, what you'll see here is 4,800. That's MSL. That's the top of the that's the ceiling of the Class C airspace there. And the outer ring, what they call the shelf, starts from 1,200 or higher and goes up to 4,000 feet AGL. Well, here the shelf starts at 1,700 feet. And did I lose everybody? You're still there? Is everybody still there? Okay. All right.
Yeah, everybody's still there, Paul.
Okay. And again, the ceiling is 4,800 feet above that. You got to have a two-way radio when you enter. Before you enter that, you've got to have permission to enter that, and a transponder is required to go in there. Now, it doesn't have to be mode C, but transponder is required. The minimum visibility is, again, 3 miles, and 500 above, below, 1,000 above, and 2,000 feet horizontally, and a minimum of a student pilot certificate.
Paul, what's that little scallop that the 4817 is pointing to? You had your cursor there a minute ago.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what that's all about. And then you've got here's the 5 mile ring, and then you have the scallop, and I don't know what that is. I can do some. That's kind of piqued my interest too. I just don't know what that is.
I wonder if it's something to do with
there
the
may be a
speedway.
heliport there.
Yeah,
Could be.
That's offshore, and I believe that is for a VFR corridor that's in there.
Man, I just don't know. It could be a VFR corridor going from Hendricks to Eagle Creek. I just don't know. Here's the speedway right here.
All
I
right.
got some friends down there. I'll call and see. Oh, hell, they fly instruments anyway. They're not going to know what it is, so. Okay. So we'll move on. So there's 4 areas around here that we have the Class C airspace. We have at Evansville. And this is the rain that's coming your way, guys. Fort Wayne has one. South Bend and Indianapolis. Those are the 4 Class C airspace in the state.
I have a
And again,
question.
they all have the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Paul, back when I had my Cirrus and we would soar over at Brookside and we would go here and there and just independent flights. It seemed to me that there were a lot of commercial aircraft headed for 2-3 at Indy, flying over the area around Geist and further out that seemed to be pretty damn low. And I'm just wondering, in actuality, what kind of altitude are those guys flying out in that area between Anderson and the outside of the core?
They're supposed to be at 10,000. But I know when I was flying there, lots of times we'd be as low as 4,000 coming through there. So there's no rhyme or reason as low as they are. Of course, they're going to have to hit the marker out here. If they're for 2-3, the marker sets out here. They're going to have to hit the marker at 2,000 feet or 1,500 feet for one of the runways. And they've got to get them slowed down. But I've been as low as 4,000 feet out there in that area.
When you can read the logo on the tail, they're pretty low.
Yeah, yeah. When you read, yeah, pretty low, especially when they're going by you.
Yeah.
You know. Has anybody heard of? They had it out in California, and there's been one instance up in Chicago now that somebody in a bat suit or something was flying by the airliners in a Batman suit, or in a flight suit, or something
Yeah, I
like
heard-
this.
I heard that out in Los Angeles, they had that problem.
Rocket Man.
Rocket Man, that's gonna be unreal. If that's, drones were bad. Geez, this is gonna be bad if we get guys out there in flight suits. So it'd be just another bird, I guess, to hit. So moving on, that handles Class C. Then the next level up is the bad boy. And I did this one this way. This is Class B. This is as bad as it gets. Chicago is the most intense Class B TCA, I'm just going to call it that, terminal control area around. But it's also the easiest to get through. And I don't know if you can see it here, but this is my flight path going from Lafayette to Oshkosh. And I have done this twice now. I'm going right under the TCA, not talking to a soul. As you can see in the TCAs out here, the floor of that airspace right there is 3,000 feet. And the tops, the whole TCA is 10,000 feet. I've gone under and I've gone over. And it's very easy to get through that. But there's everything here in this area that you want to see. There's the Class B. There's the Class C down here at Midway. You've got a Class D here at Palwaukee. And then you have Class E Airspace out in here. That's underneath the, starts at 4,000 feet. So that's Class E. And then out in here is Class G Airspace. Now, the one thing that is different about Chicago is a lot of the Class Bs have what's called a 30-mile veil, 30 nautical mile veil. And within that, you now have to have Mode C transponder with ADS-B out. And it has to be broadcasting before you can enter into that. And there's probably somebody crazy in the club that will do this, but gliders are exempt from that. Anything that doesn't have an electrical system doesn't have to have ADS-B. The problem is, though, you have to stay out of airspace and the C airspace. So you're under the floor of the, you're under the floor of the Class B. So you're not in it from 3 to 7, but you can fly all you want to underneath it without the transponder and the ADS-B. Now, I'm going to go back one page, or so I'll go forward one page. Here's the big problem. Let's say you wanted to tow the Globe up to, well, if there was an airport right in here. If you wanted to tow that airplane up there, that glider up there. Well, the glider, you could, the glider's okay to fly in there because it doesn't have an electrical system. But Pawnee does. So he can't fly in there unless he's got ADS-B out. So you're screwed one way or the other. And I personally can't think of why anybody would want to fly a glider in this area anyway. I'm sure there's somebody that would. But that Mode C or the Class B airspace or at the TCA. And if you can fly around Chicago, you can fly in any of these TCAs. So the ADS-B, you know, out's required in the A, B, C airspace. The gliders, though, they can operate with inside this bill, the 30 nautical mile bill, under it or over it. You can be either under it or on top. So you can be under 3,600 feet or above the 10,000 feet here for this one. Has anybody ever flown up through here?
Yeah, before Daly turned out to be such an asshole, I used to fly into MiGs all the time.
Oh, I know. I had a trip up there the day that he sent the bulldozers out there. And that really kind of upset me. But I had a trip up there.
Paul, David Wamsley here. Good question.
Yeah.
You said you've been to Oshkosh doing the.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah.
On your trip to Oshkosh that you had outlined earlier, going underneath everything, you've got the various control towers going up the lake shore. I've done that trip going to Road America years ago when MiGs was still there, but I recall talking to every tower along the way, and it got pretty busy at 160 knots trying to call each tower quick enough.
Yeah. Well, I guess I didn't. Yeah, I talked to the towers too, but I guess I didn't really have that much of a problem. But yeah, you still have to talk to the tower. You had to talk to MiGs. You had to talk to Gary.
I didn't
then
know.
The next big one that you go through.
Up
The
Milwaukee.
next big one that you go through is Milwaukee. Yeah, you got to talk to Milwaukee and all them, but yeah, I
Right.
didn't really have a problem with them.
I just was wondering if they created a
There's
BFR corridor.
Waukegan. No, I don't. There wasn't a corridor when I was flying up through there.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. The easiest one I really enjoyed doing was going across the top at 10,000. Because it looks like a beehive underneath you. But I really think going over the top is the safest way to go across Chicago. Because all the airliners are out lower, out on the other side of you. So, but here nor there, we won't do that with gliders. But anything else? So you've got to have a private pilot certificate to go to to any of the airports inside that Class B airspace. You can get in there with a student, but you got to have a special sign off, an endorsement to do that. And the visibility is the same of everything else, except it's 3 miles now and you're clear of clouds because you are under somebody's control.
One thing I wanted to mention, Paul, on that endorsement that you have to go out with an instructor and actually fly into the airspace with an instructor to have the endorsement. The endorsement's only good for 90 days.
Oh, I did not know that.
Well, I just happened to be studying for my commercial and instructor and I caught that point. So just wanted to let everybody know.
That would be an expensive endorsement to go up there and fly in that area and then to go back again. But there's plenty of airports underneath there that you can fly to and get close to where you need to be without having to get an endorsement or get into that Class B. So let's see, there we've done that one. What is the matter with this thing? So this, I hope this kind of alleviates, not as confusing as it was, but you know, the majority of the airspace down here is Class G. That's where we're all living close to the ground. And the next one that happens is a Class E airspace, and that covers, that's the next big area. Class A, it covers everything. But now the gliders out west, they have what's called wave corridors that a glider can get up into, can soar above 18,000 feet without the ADS-B having to have that installed. So I forgot to mention that. So there are special use airspaces around. We have a lot of them around here. Is somebody trying to ask a question? Guess not. So the big one we have here is just north of Grissom. It's a military operation area. You're not restricted to go into that, but from personal experience, I would, yeah. Is somebody saying something? But from personal experience, I've had an encounter with a fighter there, and I was boogieing through there without talking to anybody. So, but you can go through there, BFR. You don't need permission to do it, but I would seriously consider that. And then we have restricted areas. Again, personal experience. I had a student that accidentally, private pilot student at night, go through the one down at Columbus, and when they all of a sudden had, they started firing off some artillery. So we had a bunch of paperwork to fill out on that, and he gave up flying after that. But we have a restricted area down at down south. We don't have any prohibited areas here that I know of. The only ones I know that I've been involved with is out in Washington, D.C. There's, of course, prohibited areas out there. We have warning areas and restricted areas that are offshore, marked with, labeled with R's and A's for the warning areas and alert areas. And usually we don't have a problem out here. You can fly through those, but for the restricted areas, you need permissions, or the restricted and alert areas need permissions. And this is all told, you can get all the information off the sectionals, off the legends, ledgers, and to get information to fly into these areas. Any questions?
I just wanted to mention something, Paul. There's these jet training routes that military aircraft can use. There used to be one that was just east of the field there in Alexandria. It was a VFR training route. That means that the military can fly along that training route VFR greater than 250 knots.
And they do. We used to call them oil burner routes.
Yeah.
We used to call them oil burners.
Yeah, those, they have a lot of those out in the Colorado area for B-52. They were flying about 500 feet off the ground, very fast.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Say, Dave, about the low level routes, we got quite a few of them in Indiana, and most of them go all down to the down by Columbus or whatever you call it, that then they drop their ordinance and then they come scooting on home. But the A-10s are not restricted to those corridors because the A-10 doesn't fly above 250, below 10 apparently. And the state of Indiana is considered basically open space for an A-10. So if we see A-10s flying by, they're not going to be necessarily be on a route. They got free range to go anywhere they want. I forgot how I learned this or somehow I was told this, but you know, we see A-10s go by every once in a while. They're not on a route, but they don't have to be because of their speed.
So they're below 250 knots, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
They're
They operate below
250 below,
250, below 10. So they don't have to stay in like an F-16 or something that's scooting along at 300 knots or whatever they do.
Right.
They need to be, if they're going to do that, they should be in those routes. The VR routes and IR routes. The IR routes are for instrument, I believe, and the VR routes are the visual stuff. And there's one that starts out here just east of Frankfurt, and then goes down right around Lebanon and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what the ones are over by Alexandria, but it doesn't count for A-10s. A-10s and, of course, the 135s and all that other, because they can be anywhere they want to be.
Right. Well, that might explain, Mike, why that there was a VR route that was just a couple miles east of Alexandria, and I had mentioned it during one of our earlier sessions, and then whoever had looked at it said it's not there anymore, and that might be the reason, because if they can fly below 250 knots anywhere over the state, then they don't have to mark the routes down, or they don't mark the routes down. I guess that would only be for other higher performance jet traffic, like you said, F-16s or whatever.
Yeah, that's my understanding anyway.
Okay.
T-37s also fell into that category. T-37s, they could wander off the routes.
What kind of aircraft? 237?
T-37.
Oh, T-37. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, T-37.
The dog whistle.
Dog whistle?
Yeah, boy, yeah, it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Talking about the military aircraft being down at our altitudes and so, or say our altitudes, like, fairly low. Rich Smith and I went to some kind of get together up at, I think it was Logansport, and they had a speaker that came over from Grissom, and they were talking about the 135s where they operate, and they do a lot of with the 135s, at least they did, and I assume it's the same. They did a lot of touch and go practice, flying around, and their pattern is way outside of where you'd think it would be. They're at 2,500 feet, way south, and like they're landing. They got a 2-3 operation up there, so their downwind is pretty close to the Kokomo Airport, or not as far away as you'd think it would be. And then they extend way out to the northeast, up over those places upward towards Wabash, and then of course the other way. So the traffic pattern for the 135s in touch and go business up at Grissom is a lot bigger than you would think it would be. So that's something that keep your eye out for when you're up that way.
Well, they used to be a little easier to see back before they put the fan jets on the 135s. You could see them when Paul said oil burner. I remember I was on an instrument flight plan flying up by Milwaukee, and I had traffic 12 o'clock and 10 miles opposite direction. It was a KC-135 descending to 11. And I was, he's descending to 10, and I was at 9 at the time, and he was about 10 miles away, and I could see the smoke before I could see the plane. So,
Oh yeah, they just, gosh, they were grimy. But I've seen them out there from Grissom, 30 miles away from the airport, doing touch and goes. The patterns were that big.
Yeah, it's big.
That's
something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to remember too, that Grissom used to have, the B-58s flew out of Grissom, the Hustlers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd heard they were supposed to get the K-46s now or something. They're the 777 or 767. variants for tankers. So anyway, we digress. So then we get the TFRs. These will pop up anywhere, especially over here at Purdue here when Trump was flying around. There was 3 or 4 of them that would show up, and whether or not that he would come in. But these are, you know, they pop up by NOTAM. They can show up anywhere. For air shows, governmental actions, firefighting, quite a bit. And it's just basically to get airplanes out of that area for safety's sake, you know. And they, like I say, they can pop up anywhere. We had them over here for Purdue football games. So like I said, these you have to watch out for, and you
Did
need
wanna
to
mention,
check the
Paul, that
NOTAMs to make sure
that's
that
one advantage of the ForeFlight. If there's a TFR, it
Mhm.
will warn you
Yeah.
if you're approaching the TFR. Dan DeWitt was flying the Cub over by Purdue here a couple of years ago, and he was going somewhere out there to the west of Purdue, and he said all of a sudden his ForeFlight started squawking at him, and he realized there was a TFR there. Well, he was still outside it by the time he realized and was able to go around it, but he said otherwise he probably would have flown right through it.
yes,
Say, Paul, can I ask you a quick question?
yeah,
I'm going out to the airport, our airport, and I'm just going to do some local glider flying. I'm not planning on going anywhere but 5 miles from the airport. I still need to know if there's a TFR in effect, because if there was a TFR, for example, the president coming into Muncie, Indiana, then those are usually 30-mile radius deals and all that kind of stuff. So what is the easiest way for me, or for the club for that matter, maybe on a local basis, but me as a flying out of the airport, what's the easiest way for me to find out if there's any TFRs in effect that day?
call flight service.
Do we still have a flight service?
I don't know. I've been doing everything with ForeFlight. That's the way I would find out. You know, call the FAA.
Yeah.
They're the ones that's going to have to issue it.
There's a map now that's a TFR map. You can get it, just Google TFRs and it'll bring up a FAA map that shows you all the current ones.
That's up to date to the day or to the minute, so to speak?
I believe it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to do some research on that, and Tom, I'll see what I can find out. And who was asking the question?
It's Mike Nichols.
Mike. And I'll see what I can find out on that, and I'll send out an email. TFRs. Okay. Now, in case anybody wants these are the different classifications. These are the equipment requirements to fly in these various airspaces. And of course, you know, Class A that's all instrument ATC clearance. And then the others that go down through here. And the easiest is, of course, the E's and the G's. There's really no specific equipment. The aircraft doesn't have to be equipped. The toughest is going to be the B's and the C's. The C's, well, I'll put A's in there. The A, B's, and C's now that have to have ADSB out on that, and and functioning. So then also what I created here, in case anybody wanted it, these are the basic of the weather minimums for the I broke these down A through E. They're fairly easiest. That shows the flight visibility and the distance from the clouds. And then the next one I developed was, of course, the G. That is the one that is the toughest and, or not the toughest, but has the most differential differences in the flight visibility and the distance from clouds, and at or, you know, below 10,000 feet and above 10,000 feet. That would affect the chapter or the club the most. So then really that's basically all I've got from that. I hope it was fairly informative for you. Is there any questions? Any things you would like for me to do?
Well, I'd like to thank you, Paul. This is Dave Colclaser. I'd like to thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I happen to be going over all this airspace information right now, and it was a very concise presentation. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll tell you, that AIM, getting that PDF of that was a great help. You know, it seemed to answer a lot more questions than some of these manuals, but there's some very good information out there.